Welcome to the Grappling Grappling Rewind Podcast.
Welcome to this week on the Grappling Rewind Podcast. In this week's show, we're going to recap Fight to Win 180 headlined by Rafael Lovato Jr. versus Gabriel Arges. We're going to recap the 2021 Emerald City Invitational, the 145-pound bracket Emerald City number 2. We're going to talk a little bit about Polaris Squads 3, Team UK and Ireland versus Team US. We're also going to preview Fight to Win 181 and talk a little bit about Submission Underground 26. I think it's 26.
Yep.
As always in the show, I'm your host, Maine, to the co-host.
Emil.
How you doing, Emil?
I'm doing great, man. How you doing?
Doing good. Happy to have you back.
Yeah, it's good to be back.
We got some fun stuff to talk about. Wow, not a ton of news, but we do have one piece of news that we have not talked about on the show yet, and I am ecstatic for it. We have the 185-pound division has dropped for who's number one for the championship one. Essentially what is replacing ADCC this year because ADCC got bumped back to 2022. So this is going to run in September, and we're getting more names for other divisions, but we have the full 85-pound bracket for 30 grand. Want me to read through them?
Please.
We got Andrew Wiltsey, we got Craig Jones, we got Ty Rotolo, we got Michael Galvao, we got Roberto Jimenez, we got William Tackett, we got John Thorblank, and we got Dante Leon.
Just fucking thrilling, absolutely thrilling bracket. Like, so many of these guys are just like our favorites to watch.
Anyone can take this, and that's why like they're front runners.
I have some favorites to win this, but just like even the non-favorites to win it are still my favorites to watch. So regardless, this division is going to produce some fucking awesome jiu-jitsu. So I'm absolutely stoked. The person that I'm least familiar with is actually probably on one of the hottest streaks, Michael Galvao.
Yeah.
Just because I haven't been covering as much, but I know that he's been on a tear lately, listening to the shows that y'all have covered of his events. So that's fucking rad.
I like how like the dark horse is like, oh yeah, brand new black belt on a tear, murdering everyone. You're like, oh yeah, dropping a couple matches here from like tactical issues here and there, but still any given day.
Yeah, I definitely see what you're saying. Where like there are definitely like any of these folks does have the capability of taking this. You know, Thor can just fucking
break anyone's leg.
Yeah, just smash people's legs.
We're going to talk about Thor on Polaris. We saw him this week.
Yep.
We haven't seen Thor in a bit, and it was cool to have him as a late replacement on Polaris.
Obviously, Craig Jones, the same. Jimenez is a reckless submission hunter.
We'll talk about him on Polaris this week.
Ty Rotolo, Micah, all of these guys, and Wiltsey has been also like really making waves.
They got guy. It's like, hey, who's everyone on a streak at 185 that's been looking good
and just exciting?
Put them in a bracket.
It's not just like good records or whatever. Like these guys all put on dope ass matches. Like abso-fucking-lutely. Every single one of them.
Very, very excited for that bracket.
There are no controllers here. None of these guys are like smash controllers. Like
that's a good point. Yeah, we have no one that's gonna like, I'm gonna slow the match down, put on my pace. Like, nope, I'm gonna try to murder you the entire time.
Yep.
So yeah, that's super exciting. I don't have much more than that. We don't have an actual not bracket. We don't have an actual like seeding for like who's gonna face who first in the first rounds. But I am extremely happy with that division. I hope that is the division we get in September. We're only a couple months away, but I am super stoked with that division. We have a women's heavyweight division that's been announced as well. We got Rafaela Geddes announced just a couple minutes before the show, and we got Gabby Garcia in that division. I assume we're going to see Elizabeth Clay and Nate Ale in that division as well as they sort of round it out, but those are two fantastic women to have in that division. The other things we have the Roosterweight division that has some great names in it, Grace Gundra, Maisa Bastos. Basically everyone at Roosterweight and Light Feather is in that division, and I'm amped for that. It is shaping up to be a phenomenal tournament, and I'm very excited. Plus, 30 grand on the line, people are getting paid, and that's always love to see guys get paid. So I don't have any other news, Mil. Do you have any other news?
Mm-mm.
All right, so let's see. What do you want to do first?
I don't know. Where are your favorite matches?
Let's start with the most controversial. shit.
Actually, that's a good point. Yeah.
So let's start with Emerald City Invitational, their second event, number 2, 145-pound bracket.
Some really great matches. The event wasn't controversial, but there was a submission.
There's 2 submissions in the event that were for some folks. Emil and I are both like, yeah, this is a pro event, man. This happens, but we'll talk a little more about that. So I'm trying to pull up results here and stall for time.
Do you want to start with the controversy then?
So
Start with the controversy, man.
So our buddy Ellis Karadag, who runs Edgard, we've actually commentated his event twice now as Grappling Rewind. He got in his late replacement for I forget who he replaced, but he was up against Gianni Grippo in the first match, and there was a nice heel hook attempt at the beginning of the match on Grippo. I was like, ooh, he's like, this is a big match for him. This is a big replacement, and then he goes into you described the position, Emil, as it wasn't single leg X. It was he was seated 50-50 from the bottom.
Yep.
And he left his top leg on top of Grippo's thigh. Mm-hmm. And Gianni looks at the leg and just rips an inside heel hook across the center and gets a very, very quick tap from Ellis.
So, it's very unusual because this was not a position where Gianni had pinched the leg at all. Gianni's was basically in the top 50-50 in sort of like a stance that you'd think of as like combat base or whatever.
Yeah, almost like a knee down, actually.
Knee down, yep.
Yeah.
And one knee up. And he just, grabs the heel, inside heel hook grip and twists. And so, the Ellis's leg is not pinched, but Gianni twists so far that it begins applying that pressure, even as Ellis's leg flares out.
Yeah, and the knee flares out too. And so, but it's a weird heel hook. And I know this heel hook. I've never done this heel hook in the gym because it's a heel hook that you can't do unless you go super hard and super fast because you don't have the control of the knee line that like traditional heel hooks will give you.
Yep.
And so Emil and I kind of sit in the same place. Like this is essentially kind of falls in the same realm as an Estimo lock in like professional competition where it's like, yeah, they go really hard, really fast.
Right.
A lot of people have like given Gianni a lot of shit for it. And Emil and I think most of the folks in the Grappling Rewind chat have kind of gone, yeah, that's kind of what happens in pro events is guys go really, really fast and really, really hard on subs, especially subs like this that you cannot get this tap if you do this slowly. And you have $10,000 on the line for this, which is a huge payout in jiu-jitsu. The flies are in here are killing me.
Right.
My bad, Emil.
So yeah, I think you put it best. I never want to see someone get injured. And
Ellis is walking around, and I've talked to him a little bit, and he's walking around, he's icing his leg, he's walking up and down stairs, he's going to take a little bit of time off to heal.
Right. The point is, like, the way I view it is, broadly speaking, this is a combat sport, which isn't to say like anything goes, but like there are certain positions that we take that might leave us open to all kinds of vulnerabilities. Like here's an example. Closing the guard and being lifted up and just holding on while you're in air. It's like, what is the purpose of that position outside of the sport, right? Like from a combat standpoint, you're getting slammed on your head, like, in 99% of the situation. So
in fight to win, definitely.
Yeah, but even just broadly, MMA or fights, whatever you want to call it, self-defense. So that position is inherently dangerous for the person who's choosing to be there.
Right.
So from if we're a combat sport, then there should be repercussions for that. And this is a situation where like, yeah, if you're relying on, from a combat perspective, on your opponent playing nice in certain positions, then we should really think about, hey, is this really smart? Like, should we be doing this? I understand that. Yeah, this is it happens quickly. It's a submission that happens quickly, but as you said, Maine, and I agree with this, if you're okay with Estimo locks, yes, the mechanisms are a little bit different, but in terms of the speed at which it occurs and typically must occur in order for it to be successful, if you're okay with that, I feel like this falls into a little bit of the same category.
Yeah, it's what I look at, and because we do so many different events, I look at the rules and I go, is this something that is not allowed in the rules, especially in pro events, and it's not something that's not allowed. So generally speaking, at least on the show, most of us are fine with that. It's like if you're doing something that's allowed in the rules, then it's allowed in the rules. Like it's fine. And so it sucks that, we know Ellis and we're friends with Ellis, trained with him, sucks to see him injured. I hope that he comes back and is, healed up. He's moving around. That's awesome to hear. Gianni even addressed it really, really eloquently in the interview. He's like, yeah, I've trained with the guy, like before I've done privates with him. I hope he's not injured. It just, you have to go on that hook really fast to get that tap like that.
Right.
And interesting technique. You don't see it a lot. And I wanted to address the controversy initially because it's going everywhere, and we have some perspective that I wanted to share.
Right.
So that was what sort of kicked off the event for me. In the first round, we also had Kennedy Maciel defeat Jeff Mock via triangle. We had Frank Rosenthal defeat Dave Wetlab via triangle. Keith Krikorian defeated Sanjan Bujem. I butchered Suraj Bujram's name.
Yep. Estevan Martinez defeats Cameron Melo via rear naked choke in overtime. Gianni Grippo obviously defeats Ellis Cardag via heel hook. Raul Rosas Jr. defeats Luis Quinones via rear naked choke in overtime. Gabriel Souza defeats John Battle. Damien Anderson defeats Richard Alarcon via Kimura.
And that was a dope Kimura. That was another submission that was super fast. Anderson came over the top with a Kimura from standing and yanked Alarcon down off the mat and actually got the submission and got the tap midway through the transition as Alarcon landed on his back. Another kind of little bit controversial submission. And for us, it was like, yeah, it was a legal Kimura throw with that super fast, super dangerous, but you're doing a pro event. Both these guys are pros. Like, fucking Alarcon went to ADCC, top-level guy. If you're going to submit top-level guys, sometimes you got to go real hard, real fast. So it was cool to see Damien Anderson get that, like, somewhat interesting Kimura because we don't see that Kimura hit a whole lot. And Anderson's a guy that, DDS guy on the rise, purple belt. Alarcon's a black belt. It's cool to see guys, be able to punch up with subs like that. Moving into the quarterfinals, we had Kennedy Maciel defeat Frank Rosenthal via, it's listed here as rear naked choke. I wouldn't really call it a rear naked choke. It was a straight up over the chin and jaw face crank to the side, and Frank, rightfully so, taps pretty quickly to it.
Yeah, Kennedy sweeps from reverse de la Hiva, comes up to grab a single leg, and Frank defends by turning and putting both of his hands on the mat, and Kennedy just seizes that opportunity, climbs up, takes the back, and he's on there for a while. And with someone as talented as Kennedy on your back, it's just a matter of time before that submission gets set up. So...
Yeah. We had Keith Krikorian defeating Estevan Martinez via overtime. It was cool to see Estevan. He just recently got a BJJ Heroes page. I want to say within the last 2 or 3 weeks. And you've known Estevan. He's a roosterweight. He's a little guy that does absolute. He has a really, really famous viral video from probably close to 10 years ago of him just blast doubling like a 300+ pound dude as a roosterweight and just lifting and turning the corner. And that's where I came familiar with him. But he's recently gained a lot of steam, so it's cool to see him take Krikorian to overtime, and Krikorian actually is able to get a finish via in overtime there.
Keith looks swole, by the way. He looks like
he's on East Coast now, man. He's at Studio 840. Yep. Not 840, Studio 84 with Jay Leglabuto. It was funny to watch Jay Leglabuto every time Keith would go out. He would leave commentary, coach Keith, and then come back. And Brandon did a really, really great job as a solo commentator, which is one of the hardest things you can do is good solo commentary. So props to him from 10th Planet down Alabama. Good solo commentary. That is such a hard thing to do.
Gianni Grippo defeats Raul Rosas Jr. via rear naked choke in overtime.
This was, later in the match, Damien Anderson, rear naked choke was crazy. Gianni gets it in overtime and gets the finish.
Damien Anderson defeats Gabriel Souza via heel hook.
Again, Damien Anderson was on a tear at this point. Your first match is against Richard Alarcon, finish a Kimura. Your second match, Gabriel Souza, heel hook. Really quick heel hook, too.
Yeah, outstanding. And then semifinals, Kennedy Maciel defeats Keith Krikorian in overtime via fastest escape. And then the other semifinal, Gianni Grippo defeats Damien Anderson via overtime by fastest escape. And we've talked about it ad nauseum. I'm not going to say more than a sentence on it, but overtime, what do we get out of it?
I'd like to. The overtime was a bit long for me too.
Not just long, but fastest escape. What are we getting out of that?
Especially we have the semifinals and the finals all go to overtime and fastest escape. These guys are really, really good at top levels, especially if you're coming through a bracket, that these guys have come through already. And these guys are really, really good. You're not usually going to submit these guys in overtime, and so you're going to ride the clock out. You're going to ride the clock out 6 different times, each guy getting 3 shots at it.
Right.
And for a 10-minute match, we then have a 12 to 15-minute overtime, and to have 3 overtimes, or really 2 overtimes, a super fight match, and then a third overtime round after a round, it went a lot longer.
Yep. Just from a product standpoint, like what are you getting? As the fans, what are we getting? And especially in the final where Gianni Grippo defeats Kennedy Maciel in overtime via fastest escape, Kennedy during the regulation passes Johnny's guard, puts him in side control for like 2 minutes.
It was really cool because Johnny addressed that after the event. He was like, I hate getting my guard passed. He goes, but I had to put my ego aside because I know it's submission only.
Right.
And I knew that I had to take him to overtime. He's not going to submit me. I'm probably not going to submit him.
Right.
I let him get past the guard and didn't fight him as hard so that I had more gas going into overtime. It was a really interesting interview, whether you believe that or not.
Right.
It was really interesting to hear Gianni Grippo specifically address the ego in getting his guard
even
passed.
if it is true, it's like, and total respect for that strategy.
Yeah.
You know, and I actually, knowing Johnny, he's so savvy. That's probably exactly what happened. But then that's exactly it, where it's like, okay, that is what the competitors are going to prioritize.
You're
now.
making strategic mistakes to save your gas tank because you know you're going to go to overtime.
Not mistakes, but not fighting as hard. And so
you're conceding. You're conceding a guard pass, which for Johnny is huge. And any other rule set
Kennedy
is like
was going for north-souths, which might not have like really ever been a serious threat to Johnny, but like that's what the rule format is encouraging. And I would much rather. I would have been totally fine with like an all-out battle, and maybe Johnny maintains guard and it becomes a stalemate and it ends there, and either you go rest decision, or I guess in a tournament format there's no draws, right? Because you need to progress even in the finals. But like, I'd be okay, like those get controversial, but like I would be okay with that.
Yeah.
And we might have gotten, a more exciting regulation time.
Because you guys don't want to take it to decision. So it's just interesting. And it was unfortunate to see 3 overtimes with Kennedy and Keith and then Gianni and Damien Anderson, which is a really interesting overtime because Gianni got out of the guard and Anderson in the finals in the last overtime, instead of taking the back, went for the arm as essentially like a Hail Mary. Gianni escaped really quickly, and it was the tactics behind it was interesting because you almost should always choose the arm if the guy has more riding time in the final overtime, because you're not going to hold for the whole time or submit from the back because you already haven't submitted from the back. But I would love to see a different format put in place for overtime, because giving someone the back for me, especially multiple times in a row like this, was less interesting. I think there is a more interesting way to do it, and there's a way that I think we'll see more from the athletes able to showcase more of their game if it doesn't go to overtime. So overall, though, wildly fun tournament. I brought some folks over to the house and we watched it. Had a great time watching the event. It was cool to see the event was as stacked as it was. We got some really nice jiu-jitsu out of it. It's cool to showcase a lot more of the East Coast talent. We have some really great talent over here, so I do like when events like this run in the East Coast. Gianni Grippo takes home $10,000, which, like, props to him. He's been on not a loss. He's had one sub loss at EUG a while back, but it's cool to see Gianni essentially getting a nogi, not turn the corner, but like him showcase the nogi that he can do. He talked about training in Hoboken with the Meows and even Ray from like 10th Planet. Like, there's a bunch of featherweights in that room, and he talked about training. And I went, ooh, that's a really interesting training situation, because you have like 6 or 8 really good competitive featherweight black belts that you're training with on the regular now. I think we're going to see kind of a resurgence from Gianni post this event, because he's changed his training situation. I think he's happy with that new training situation.
Yeah, we'll see. I know, Johnny has, as with so many of these modern competitors, switched camps a few times. Yeah. So yeah, hopefully
he went to Henzo's, was at Marcelo's for a long time, and now he's at the Hoboken. And there's rumors that there's gonna be a gym opened up with that group out in Hoboken. So props to him. It's cool to see Gianni and Nogi. We haven't seen him in Nogi in a bit here. On a super fight, we had Joe Bays doing what Joe Bays does versus Drew Puzon. Hits an inverted sweep over to heel hook, and then hits the outside heel hook. If you are familiar with Joe Bays, you know what Joe Bays does. That's what Joe Bays does. So it was a nice super fight between the semifinals and the finals. Lucky this time for Emerald City. Doctor was there the whole time. We didn't have to amend the event, and very happy with these guys. Cannot wait to see more from Sam and the folks over at Emerald City. Looking forward to the next one. All right, let's move on. Want to move to Fight to Win or Polaris?
Let's do Fight to Win.
All right. Sorry, bang your computer, Emil. Moving on to our recap of Fight to Win 180. This one was headlined by Rafael Lovato Jr. defeating Gabriel Arges via decision.
Yeah, Arges doing every single guard known to mankind practically. Butterfly half, knee shield, closed guard, rubber guard. At one point, Arges actually initiates a berimbolo and, doesn't end up switching positions.
Lovato did a really good job of identifying the Baron roll and then immediately planting heavy on the foot and turning his hips to the side and then sort of settling in base and not letting Arges get beyond like the 45 degree or like really the 90 degree angle to the side. And I thought it was a really, really interesting shift because Lovato essentially let Arges do the roll and kind of come through, but just settled the position as Arges was rolling. And it was
basically
very nice to see.
Lands in a closed guard, like no real progression there. And yeah, Lovato did his thing with pressuring, just
really
strong
just
pressure
consistent pressure passing the whole time. He never really fully gets past the guard.
Nope.
But he chains a couple of things together. He goes for like a knee step. He goes for like a knee cut over. He goes for a double under like once or twice in the match. But but Arges does a really good job of consistently maintaining the space and like either putting Lovato in some sort of guard or kind of forcing Lovato to reset. And that was sort of the style of the match, is just Lovato's consistent, heavy forward pressure and Arges consistently showing him different guards and giving him different things he has to work with.
Yep. And as time expires, Lovato Jr. goes for, a little bit of a heel hook there, but, wasn't a deep in the progression of danger.
Leg locks in the last 30 seconds don't count.
Exactly.
As we say on the Grappling Rewind.
Yep. So it's definitely one of those, but probably between that and the pressure enough to secure Rafael the decision for the win.
Yeah, and he wins the 205-pound title, which is awesome to see Lovato with another title fight to win. We see him frequently. We see him defending, so very excited to see who he defends against first.
Yep.
Next match, we had Johnny Tama defeating Edwin Najmi via heel hook, and this was submission of the night for the black belts. Dude, Tama's leg lock, he has a lock named after him. It's not surprising, but Tama shows a bunch of diversity in his game. But I really love Tama matches when he decides, like, I'm gonna play legs the entire time.
That's exactly what he did.
Especially given a guy like Najmi, who has historically had a couple issues in no-gi with leg locks. Najmi is a guy that, up to, I think, last year, didn't really train a ton of no-gi. I mean, even into his 80cc run, talked about he only trains no-gi very, very infrequently. He only had a couple of no-gi matches at black belt up to that point.
Yeah. And, that might have certainly played a factor. I think, also Najmi's style is, I don't have like words to describe it exactly, but it's like maybe an analogy is almost like a little bit like how the Diaz brothers are, where it's like they're in dangerous positions, but they're like, fuck you, kind of like.
Right.
So like,
he's not really worried about
he always
being
looks
in bad
really
spots.
like kind of like unfazed when he's put into especially leg entanglements. And so in this case, and he was doing a great job, like lots of knee cuts by Najmi, Tama going for entanglement after entanglement, Najmi really doing a great job at clearing the knee line. And
he fights out of, I think, 4 or 5 different deep attacks from Tama.
Easily.
There was something that was interesting. You talking about the finishing sequence next?
Just kind of what you were going off of what you're saying. There was a bunch of very different leg lock environments that they were in. At one point, Edwin goes for straight ankle while Tama is simultaneously going for his own heel hook in sort of like a 50-50 leg battle.
That was what was most curious to me at the end, or one of the ending sequences, was Najmi grabbed a really, really deep straight ankle lock and was going on it hard, but never elected to switch out for the heel hook. Like I thought,
even the commentators said that,
and I thought the commentators picked up on that. And it's something we've seen from Najmi before. He tends to favor the straight ankle over the heel hook. And I forget what match. I believe it was a fight to win match. I don't think it was a Third Coast match, but we've seen this before from Najmi, where he goes for the ankle lock and then he never decides to switch to the outside for the heel hook. And I think, and obviously here, because Tama finishes the heel hook, Tama reacts off of the straight ankle lock, gets his preferred foot positioning, goes to the heel hook, and then off of that grip is able to finish the heel hook.
No, this wasn't the finishing sequence.
Oh, that was the one. Sorry, that was the leg lock sequence before the finishing sequence.
So, like, Edwin, in a 50-50, like, particularly like outside heel hook sort of attack, it's a little hard even with heel hooks to get the finisher. Like if it's an inside 50-50 heel hook, then absolutely. But that wasn't the case here. And so, Edwin might have just felt like he had a better bite on the straight ankle or whatever, and like not wanted to readjust and give Tama the opportunity, even in that split second, to like retract his leg and potentially like get a better position. So it's hard to speculate there. But the ending sequence was basically Tama getting a really high bite on an outside sankaku and going for that inside heel hook, and Edwin turns to escape, but Tama's knee grip is so strong and so high, it's bitten down, that Tama's belly down and finishes the inside heel hook. And it's like, it's basically sort of like it's a little bit like the position that Lachlan was finishing the big dudes at ADCC with, where a lot of the times they were turned away like that. They were
facing the wrong way. It wasn't from a K guard like Lachlan hit, but it was a very similar like finishing sequence where the people would go to turn out to pull out, but Lachlan had a good enough grip, and here Tama has a good enough grip on the top of the thigh with the knee still trapped that he's able to have the pressure that he needs to finish the heel hook. And so, it was a very fun match. Again, I'm curious tactically why Najmi continues to go for the straight ankle locks at such length and not switch off to the heel hook. He's one of the few guys that continue to do that. Again, he's a very, very established competitor that really knows what he's doing. I'm just sort of curious of that fold in his game because it is uncommon in the no-gi scene.
Right.
So that was the submission night for the black belts. One more match I want to talk about on Fight to Win is Barrett Yoshida versus Jeff Nolasko. It's listed as an assassin choke. I think that's a pretty reasonable thing to call this choke.
This is so fucking awesome. Yoshida doing what Yoshida does, which is getting to the crucifix.
Barrett Yoshida is the back crucifix guy. If you've never watched Barrett Yoshida before, go back and just do yourself a favor and watch some highlights of.
Watch this fucking match. Like, this was so dope. Like, because we've seen Yoshida in crucifix a million times. These were a little bit new wrinkles for me, which I really liked. Where the way Yoshida opted to deal with the far side arm was brilliant, because we'll see a lot of the times guys and Barrett included, Kimura that far arm in the gi.
He does it in no-gi a lot, but it was cool to see him in the gi. He pulls out the lower lapel of the gi on Nolasko's gi, and then he
gift wraps it.
He chicken wings the arm, so that Nolasko can never fully extend the arm to break the lapel control out, and so he's left with that high arm, which functionally works the same as the overhook and the crucifix, but now the arm is actually trapped. So you have the lower arm trapped with your legs, and Barrett is such an amazing guy at trapping that. He does it from the guard this time, which we've seen him do on Fight to Win before.
Barrett was using one arm to control the far arm, as opposed to like a Kimura grip where Barrett would have had to use two arms to control that far arm. So with one arm, that left Barrett with a free arm, and
he was going for like the straight up crucifix choke with no lapel, and just going over him. Jeff is doing a really good job of keeping the head low, turning the hand, and defending it with just his neck.
So then with his free hand, Barrett grabs his own lapel, loops it around after a lot of fighting, and gets the fucking assassin choke. And it was just an awesome setup. Really, really dope.
If you're not familiar with what the assassin choke is, it is essentially like a piano wire choke, or like you have your gi over their neck and you're looped over and you're just pulling like a garrote with the one arm around their neck. And it was funny because usually what this is, when it's done like nicely, or like when it's done cleanly, you see the gi and everything is below the chin, but the flap of the lapel was over top Nolasko's face a little bit. And I went, oh, I'm not sure if the chin's in the way. And then Barrett like kind of fixes it down and gets it in. But it's not a sub we see. I can't remember the last time I've seen, or we've covered a match that featured this choke.
I haven't seen it. So it was dope.
It was a really cool Really cool choke. Also on this card, anything wrong on that match?
That's it.
Go back and watch Barrett Yoshida. He's earned it.
Such a great finish.
Dude, his entries to the crucifix blow my mind every time because he's entering for the crucifix from like you in his guard, and you'll try to like wrestle him down, and he'll tech up on you and then enter the crucifix that way. It's just he's one of those guys that I would learn. Like I want to learn that position from you. And my brother actually has trained with him before when he was living in San Diego. I want to learn like his crucifix because they're awesome.
Yeah.
Also on the card, we had Rafael dos Anjos taking a somewhat controversial split decision over Mateus Luna, new black belt. I think we're going to see more of him. So that was a fun back and forth match.
Mayara Castillo defeats Talita Noguera via decision. Marcelo Mafra defeats Chris Hargett via decision. Iago de Souza defeats Mateus Luna via decision. So the second Mateus Luna match. Gabriel Almeida defeats Xavier Silva via decision, and that was fight of the night for the black belts. Jason Youssef defeats Carl Boudreaux via triangle. Johnny Ho defeats PJ Montano via heel hook. Ricky Salas defeats Thiago Angelon via there was an injury pulling him out. Jair Silva defeats Leonidas Tarka via decision. Omar Sabra defeats Nick Green via decision. Elder Cruz defeats Art Garcia via decision. Joao Pacheco defeats Gabriel Castro via decision. Michael John defeats Carlo Marasigan via decision. Sean Joseph defeats Ron Henderson via split decision. And Rodrigo Freitas defeats Zimitro Perez via choke.
We also had an open weight title for Nogi. We had Bree Robinson defeating Hella Carver via decision.
Yeah.
So really great event. Had some fun matches on it. Want to move on to Polaris Squads?
Let's do it.
So we are not going to cover every match on Polaris Squads because it would be a very, very long, very long recap. Yep. So if you're not familiar with the Polaris Squads format, it is essentially a mixture of like soccer timing with quintet.
Right. So there's there's overall periods that I think are like 40 minutes.
I think they're two 60-minute periods, I think.
And during those periods, basically the two teams square off and have a sort of quintet-style event where, the teams pick people to fight each other. If there's a draw, both team members go back.
Yeah, but you're not eliminated from the event. You're just eliminated from that round, essentially.
Right. So
throughout the time, it's a series of 5, I think, 6-minute matches?
I can't remember.
It depends on the weight.
And your team gets points if you get a submission, essentially.
Right. And if someone from the 75 pound, under 75 kilogram defeats someone from the under 95 kilogram, you get 3 points. If it's in the same weight class, you get 1 point. And then if there's an injury, that person leaving is essentially a negative point for their team.
So let's read off the teams because each team had people over and under under 75 kilograms and then also under 95 kilograms. So for Team UK and Ireland, under 75 kilograms, we have Jed Hugh, Ross Nichols, Ellis Younger, and Dara O'Connell. Under 95 kilograms, we have Bradley Hill, Dan Strauss, Kieran Davern, and Ben Dyson. For Team USA, under 75 kilograms, we have Gio Martinez, Nathan Orchard, Nick Ronan, and Adam Benayoun. Under 95 kilograms for USA, we have Roberto Jimenez, Hunter Colvin, Richie Martinez, and John Thor Blank.
So essentially, 10th Planet was representing the U.S.
Hell yeah.
Thanks Team 10th Planet. Also some other guys in there, whether or not 10th Planet, but it was about half the squad.
Yep.
Was 10th Planet guys, and so they showed up. We're just going to talk through the subs. There was a lot of draws. There was a lot of fun matches. It's a fun event, about 3 hours of matches overall. But I want to talk about a couple of the subs because they were very interesting. I want to kick it off with the first sub for Team USA. Nathan Orchard defeating Karen Davern via
neck crank.
See, Emil and I watched this, and we watched it over and over again, and then we watched it a few more times, and you were thinking it might have been a rib thing, it might have been a neck crank, and it was listed in some other places as like a modified twister from the body triangle,
right.
And I couldn't figure out what it was. I geared towards neck crank, but I think you can make an argument either way.
It's a little hard to tell, so Nathan starts setting up the twister, and Maine, you pointed out, Kieran sees what's happening and does a good job fighting for the position to prevent Nathan from...
The twister is a thing that you see happening, and you're like, not today. Like,
right.
I'm not going to get twisted at a pro event. Like, and I think Orchard has a couple of twisters at pro events.
Right.
But you see it getting set up, and it's that cross-side hook where you don't have back control, and Orchard gets back control later, but you have a cross-side back control on the outside leg, and then you try to loop their arm over your head, and it's
envision like two drunk guys stumbling down the street with like arms over each other's shoulders. That's kind of what you're doing, and so.
But it's a move that is so different than any other move in jiu-jitsu that like when some guy starts to set it up, and you're like, I know immediately what this is, and I do not want this to happen.
It's never the leg grip that tips you off, because that could be a few things. It's just a nice, truck kind of like ish control. But yeah, it's the swimming the arm behind the head.
It's a very specific style of swim, and like, why is he holding my arm? Oh, he's trying to put it behind his. Oh, I'm sure he's trying to twister me.
Yep. And so anyway, Kieran defends that. Nathan switches from that sort of like twister or like truck style leg entanglement up to a body lock.
Yeah,
and
body
then,
triangle, like a little higher of a body triangle, sort of on the ribs and like lower ribs of Kieran Davern. It's not like a waist lock. It's like definitely sort of
it's a little higher. But what happens is, Nathan is attacking from the back, essentially going for rear naked choke or neck crank, and eventually they rotate a little bit, and Nathan is now like not facing in square to the back, but kind of off to the side.
Kieran's trying to rotate into the guard to like escape the back mount, and Nathan kind of half like doesn't let him roll, but is going for like a crank over the
almost
side.
Like, it from the camera angle was difficult, but it looked like you could think of Nathan having almost like a headlock, like neck crank ish type grip. But then and it was hard to see how that was impacting Kieran from that camera angle. But the one thing I did see was Nathan was angled and maybe a little high on the body lock, and so part of me wonders, was that just putting pressure on Kieran's ribs, because I have absolutely bruised the rib and had to tap due to a body lock like that before. So it happens.
But yeah, it was a neat sub, and it's always kind of funny. You're like, I'm not sure what happened. We have another one of those subs. I think we should talk. That's not the next sub we'll talk about. We also have on this card. So that was the end of. That was the only sub in round one. Team USA was up 3 points because Nathan Orchard was in the under 75 kilogram division and Kieran Davern was in the under 95 kilogram division. So USA got 3 points for that match. Round two, so they break it up into rounds. So there's essentially a restructuring of the teams round to round. It gives guys a break, and then you move on to round two. There's two subs in round two. First one I want to talk about is Roberto Jimenez showing up, and dude, he was on a tear tonight. On this event, he just did what we love Roberto Jimenez to do, which is like push the pace, push the pace, push the pace, push the pace, push the pace. And on Bradley Hill, he hits a really, really great counter to Bradley Hill trying to take his back, counters off of it, almost rolls like he's going to go truck, does that classic Jimenez back take, and then Bradley Hill, to his credit, does a really good job of escaping the hook, flattening out, but Jimenez has amazing top control, and so he's able to just keep the control of the back, swim the hand under, and as he takes the back the second time of Bradley Hill, he loops his right leg over and immediately traps the arm of Bradley Hill. He's just so dexterous with his hips that few guys, I think, at the weight have the dexterity to open their hips and just fight for the arm as high and as quickly as Jimenez does.
Right.
And then he just slides the choke over, and with the quickness, Bradley Hill has one arm trapped because Jimenez has the arm trapped, and then he has the other arm trapped with his own leg. And that's all she wrote. Jimenez gets the tap, gets 1 point for Team USA. The next match is a draw, and then so Jimenez is out. And then we go on to Gio Martinez versus Dan Strauss. And Dan Strauss has been putting a ton of pressure. We saw that in his match earlier, I think 2 matches earlier, with Hunter Colvin, just consistently pushing really, really heavy passing pressure, doing a lot of resetting. Any position he didn't like, he was out and then back in again.
Dan also having a lot of experience in the quintet style rules, having competed in quintet a couple of times. Mm-hmm. So this is really interesting because Gio starts to initiate a passing sequence, and Dan is playing a little bit of knee shield.
He's kind of looking framing for the inversions a lot too.
Yep. And also, using his really great strength.
If you don't know Dan Strauss,
he's a grip strength trainer.
Listen to his podcast. B, he is a grip strength and like strength implement and like like strongman nut. He has all sorts of like random implements and things that are just designed to make him ridiculously strong for grappling.
So from that like sort of knee shield, he, Dan was electing for a collar tie. And what Gio does is he kind of, lets Dan do that and then starts driving forward for the pass really aggressively, now pushing Dan's collar tie up over and elevating it, and then basically almost like gable gripping a little bit behind
like gable gripping right on the forearms. Like he's not gable gripping with the hands. He's
Gio's yeah. He's doing an almost gable grip on his own forearms, and he has that grip behind Dan's bicep while Dan's arm is extended up and over Gio's back as Gio is driving forward, and he's pulling in with that, almost like almost like a guillotine motion,
like a violent arm lock, like you would do with a violent arm lock.
That's exactly what it is.
And what I laughed is because I watched this and my notes, I was like, okay, freak injury happens. Dan Strauss is trying to like invert and pull Gio over, and then Emil was like, oh, I don't think that's what happened. I think Gio was intentionally going for this like sub. And what happens is in this transition, Dan goes taps, and then you see that he's like grabbing the top end of his pec, and I think his pec ended up tearing,
right?
Which is a terrible injury. I hope that he heals up soon. But in watching this, and Emil had me watch it a couple more times, and I went, oh, I think you're right. I think Gio was actively, and we actually got onto the ground and we did it, and Emil was feel the pressure on the shoulder. I went, oh, yeah, so you think you actually, in the pre-show here, convinced me that this was something that Martinez was intentionally looking for as like and we know both Martinez brothers will throw that violent arm lock a ton. I mean,
that's
Boogie,
a great way to describe it. That's the mechanism. It's basically, it's similar to exactly the violent arm lock, except
he's low on the shoulder, so it's shoulder pressure.
Passing position.
Yeah, and so he can drive his shoulder into it.
Right.
So it was like essentially a violent arm lock from the top, from a passing position, which I don't know if I've ever seen anyone finish before.
Rather than putting any pressure on the elbow like a normal arm lock, I felt it absolutely in my pec. Like it felt awful, and like I could definitely see if you were driving your weight forward, I would have had to tap.
And if
100%.
you were a giant strong man that may not have huge, I can't speak for Strauss's mobility, but
like shoulder flexibility
is like really, because Strauss is like such a strong man. He literally lifted the Dinnie Stones last year, which is like a huge feat of strength. To have a guy like Martinez driving in and pulling so aggressively on that to tear the pack, it's unfortunate, but really interesting. It's not a submission that we see that I've ever seen like this before, barring the injury. It's just not something we see a whole lot, and so. Yeah, interesting. You definitely turned me around with like, oh, this was an intentional like submission attempt from Martinez, and I thought it was really interesting because they tend, again, both Martinez brothers will use that violent arm lock and tend to throw aggressive, unorthodox subs like this. So Team USA with that scores another 3 points, and Strauss is out with injury as a result. Final score is Team UK and Ireland 0 and Team USA 7. Team USA takes that. They give a nice speech. Anything else on the tournament you want to talk about? Also on this, there was a super fight between Kyle Bain and, I'm going to butcher his name, I apologize, Natasha Silviu. Silviu. And Natasha, we've covered him before, or I think it's Nastasa.
Nastasa Silviu.
Is the guy that won the Polaris like qualifier they ran a while ago. It's like, look, you want to make it on Polaris? We're running this event. You went kind of like Kasai did,
right?
And I love those. So it's awesome to have him get a super fight with Kyle Bain. Kyle Bain defeats him in about 30 seconds with, was it inside or outside heel hook?
I cannot remember actually. But it happens very quick, 30 seconds.
Yeah, he gets in there and Kyle Bain is ridiculously strong, turns over, gets the angle, goes belly down, turns out the heel hook, and that's all she wrote. And then Kyle Bain calls out Craig Jones. That's a match that I would not be against seeing. We saw it in that weird tag team match at SUG a while back, but I would be interested in seeing it. Again, Craig's going to give up some weight there for Bain, but I probably expect 20 pounds of weight. I would be interested to see it in either the Polaris rule set, because Craig Jones is competing in Polaris now. Kyle's competed in Polaris now. I would be interested to see it, but regardless, that's a match that I was like, ooh, actually, I would be very interested to see that match for like a 10-minute match.
Yeah.
So that does it. Polaris was a lot of fun. It is on UFC Fight Pass. It's cool to see some unorthodox submissions. I hope they keep it running with the teams format. I wish there was a few less draws. The event was a bit long, but I do appreciate the format. It gives us. We got to see all the guys multiple times throughout the event, so it's not like the quintet where potentially you only see a guy go once. They both have their strengths and weaknesses. I do appreciate Polaris bringing their own format in and like trialing the event, bringing guys in from all around the world to represent teams. It's a fun format and it's an interesting event. That does it. Let's move on to the previews. Anything else for those events?
Mm-mm.
All right, so we have 2 events next week. We have Fight to Win 181. At this time, it's Monday at about 6:30 p.m. I don't have any announcements for
Matches.
For Fight to Win. Unfortunately, this last card kind of got put together, and I saw it, I think, Tuesday, or I think I saw it Thursday, and I was like, that's
Clearly
a really
lot of
good
talent.
card.
Yeah. So I'm sure 181 will also have that. So tune in.
Excited for that. We also have next week, we have Submission Underground 26. I got it wrong in the intro.
No, you did.
I thought I said 25.
You got it right. No, I'm pretty sure you said 26.
Okay. We have a main event, TT Matt Mafia versus, it's a tag team match, versus Gracie Barra. We have we have Pedro Mourinho representing Team Gracie Barra and some other folks on the other teams. Co-main event, we have Gabriel Checo and versus Dylan Marcus. We have Caitlin Chikagian versus Jillian Robertson, and Kevin Casey versus Andy Varela. Andy Varela, still in the main card, just lost the title. Match to Pedro Mourinho, so I'm curious to see if they're going to run that back in the future. They also have an undercard event that happens on August 15th.
Yeah.
So that is that. Anything that does for this week on the show is we kind of ran through it relatively quickly.
Yeah.
You got anything fun happening this weekend?
What's going on this weekend? No, I'm actually chilling. It's awesome. I need a weekend to recover, man. Like. I didn't even, this didn't even directly happen to me, but like my family got stranded in Puerto Rico for a little bit due to all of the flight cancellation insanity. I don't know if you saw this, but like
no.
Basically there was a perfect storm clusterfuck of a literal storm taking out Dallas for a while, and a bunch of airlines also being like understaffed, and like 1,300 flights had been canceled by like Wednesday.
Holy shit.
And we're just like cascading out.
Because once you cancel 100 flights, like that has what's the word? That cascades affect the rest of the flights in the world, because planes don't just fly to one place.
So I'm getting calls from my sister that's like, flight number 1 got canceled. Oh, it's cool. We get to like hang out on Puerto Rico for like another day or whatever, and like we still have friends and family there.
By the 5th day, you're
they're like,
I want to go home.
That's literally what it was. And like multiple cancellations, and then finally she was like, we're at the airport. They canceled again their rental car, both their rental car and Airbnb that they'd been able to extend day by day for like the regular rate. They had to end, and like car rentals were $700 a day. Hotels.
My parents were talking about for the wedding, because they came up for the wedding. My parents were like, "Yeah, we're not going to rent a car for like a while because it's like $500."
Yeah, and it was nuts. So I, scrambled and got them, tickets back to the East Coast. So they are back.
So you've had a very, very stressful week.
Yeah, it's been stressful, and so I'm looking forward to just chilling out. But yeah.
Yeah, I have absolutely nothing this week. I'm doing PT. I'm actually super optimistic that I'm getting a little better.
Sweet.
I'm in like less constant pain.
Hell yeah.
So that's super exciting.
Awesome.
This is Maine's back surgery update. Like part probably 160 at this point. It's good. I'm swimming. I'm doing more swimming. I'm looking at like doing a triathlon. Not actually going to do it yet because I can't like walk for more than a couple minutes without pain. But if I'm going to swim this much and get in like that good a shape, like I was already running before, I have a bike.
You can swim without doing a fucking triathlon.
I'm going to do like a sprint triathlon.
Oh my God.
Which is like only like a half mile. It's only like a 22-mile bike, and it's only like a 5K run. Like it'll be like getting back from back surgery and injuries for 3 years, and then
take it slow, man.
I'm not gonna do it this month. I'm gonna do it once I get approval from my doctor, and once I can like run without and walk without pain.
Right.
But that's now on the radar for me.
Okay.
Because if I'm going to swim this much, I might as well have a goal because I'm big on goal setting. So it's like, all right, well, that's my goal now. In the next year, I'm going to run a triathlon. Why I do this to myself, I don't know. But now that I've said it on the podcast, I have to do it.
Oh, I think you
so.
don't.
Here we are, Emil. Other than that, it's hopefully it'll be a pretty chill week. Rich and I've been just insanely busy. Looking forward to watching Fight to Win on Friday night and just hanging out, trying to get the house together a little more, to potentially have people and folks over more to watch jiu-jitsu events, because we watched Emerald City this weekend. I'm like, we watched Fight to Win a couple weekends ago, like bringing people over to the house. I'm like, I really enjoy doing that, and I should do that more because I have a house now and I can just do that. So making an effort to do that. Other than that, nothing else much going on.
Cool.
So, as with the show, I'm your host, Maine, to my co-host,
Emil.
and we are the Grappling Rewind. To see the mat, whatever that is, stay safe. If you like the show, please consider sharing it on Facebook with the folks at your gym. It's the best way that we grow the show, and we really appreciate it. You can reach out to us on email.
We also have Instagram. We have Facebook. We have Twitter. We have Google+.
Until that shuts down.
We have a website.
If you have an event you would like to have us cover, please let us know. If you have a name, like most people do, and you'd like to have us stop butchering it,
let us know.
Reach out to us. The show is also available on YouTube, Spotify, in addition to iTunes and every other podcast service. We very much appreciate your time, and thank you.